Script here. I hereby call this meeting of the King George County Service Authority Board of Directors Budget Work Session to order. I hereby invoke the rules and procedures previously adopted by the Board of Supervisors and the Service Authority Board of Directors, allowing for electronic participation by some members with a quorum physically present. This action is taken as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic and the governor's orders regarding limiting of gatherings and staying in place during a disaster. Electronic participation is encouraged, and pursuant to the governor's emergency orders, social distancing shall be maintained for all physically present. If you choose to be physically present, you will be screened by authorized staff for signs and symptoms of illness. Based on the results of that screening, certain physical attendees may be denied entry. The following members are physically present:
Alan Parker, physically present.
Carrie Cleveland, physically present.
Annie Kupka, physically present. The following members are participating through electronic and remote means after notifying the chair that temporary disabilities and/or other conditions exist that prevent the members' physical attendance.
James Morris, attending remotely.
Thank you, Mr. Morris. I direct the clerk to include this statement and any statement of remotely participating board members to be memorialized in the minutes. All right, we'll move on to public comment. Is there anyone present here to provide public comment? Seeing none, Mr. Dines, do you have anyone online, sir, for public comment? All right, very good. I'll close public comment and we'll move on to Mr. Weekly with revenues.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Chris, if you can bring that up, please. It'll be the first one on the tab. So while Mr. Dines brings it up, I do just want to point out, and I appreciate your patience, there was a typo. The agenda you have before you tonight, it has the proper adjournment because you will have a 5 p.m. start time for the joint meeting next Tuesday. So sorry about that. Chris, can you bring up the revenues, please? So tonight we will cover revenues and rates. They kind of go together. Although you have a 5-year rate plan, the board, when they approved that in 2019, I know one board can't supersede another, but you do want to review that. So you had the revenue. There you go. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. All right, so revenue, I'm going to cover this by giving a little background. The Service Authority generally gets its revenues by 2 means of revenue streams. You have your billable services, so that is the bi-monthly bills that are issued for water and or sewer consumption. And then we have the connection fees. So every year, at least for the last 2 years, we've basically budgeted for 50 connections. That's 50 full service connections. That's water and sewer, and that's roughly a little over $19,800 per connection. So that's a residential. Anything above and beyond, obviously, is revenue that's not projected but would be realized. A few years back, Davenport, when they met with the board of directors and Service Authority and county staff, that was a strategy we had in place. We didn't want to undershoot or overshoot, but it had to do with the overall 5-year rate plan, which I'm going to talk about rates following revenue. So just a little bit of background. So in revenues, I spoke about the billable services. So when you look up on the chart, you see water fees, sewer fees, debt fee, water user fee. This conference will now be recorded. And debt fees, sewer user fees. And then you go down to the bottom, there's a capital reserve fee. All that's the billable portion. And I made note with the 4% rate increase that's scheduled for this year, that roughly totals $248,303 of new revenue due to the rate increase that's scheduled for this year. The rest of the fees, the debt service, connection fees. So once you start seeing connection going down to availability fees, you add that up, the 50 connection fees totals $992,250. So I didn't total that, but if you essentially take those connection fee line items going all the way down, so you would start at debt fee, water connection fee, and go down until you reach sewer connection fees. And if you total all that up, you would come up to the $992,250, so just under $1 million. There's a couple other items that we track for revenue. They're not as substantial. Revenue is revenue, but it's nowhere near the amount of revenues by those other two items. For example, bulk water sales. We allow bulk water by water haulers. They have to be approved. We have a form at the shop where they come in, they fill out the application. Patty or Stacy or myself will go out and view the truck, make sure it has the appropriate air gap. We get all their license, all their information, so we can set them up and bill them for that service. The hydrant off of Barber's Way is the only certified hydrant. When I say certified, it's for that use only. So when you hear bulk water sales, we don't drive them by a water plant. It's via reporting the amount of load. So whatever they bring by our office for review, is that a 1,500 gallon container or is it a 3,000 gallon truck? And that's how they're billed for that. So we're projecting about $12,000 of revenue from that. Account service fees, I skipped over it, I apologize. That's if anyone sets up a new account. That's an account service fee that's charged for each and every account. So we're projecting $34,000. That's just flat line. There's not a lot of movement on that, so we didn't want to over project. Water operator fees, that's schools. So it used to be we had two systems for the schools that we monitor. That was the old KG Elementary and the school board office. We still look at the old KG Middle School, but that's a county asset. We certainly don't charge the county, nor will we, because we talked about that wonderful service we get through our central cost allocation. So there's $7,000 there for anything associated with the school board system. Quite honestly, any of the maintenance or anything over there, they take care of that, but there's $7,000 there. Capital reserve fee, we covered that. That's part of the billable services, and that was enacted, was that about 2016, Patty, that fee came about? It was originally a $2 fee. It hasn't been too long ago.
I don't think it went back that far.
So it hasn't been too long ago. The objective, thank you, the objective was to actually start having some capital reserve funds. So you're not trying to do it through debt service. We realize it's not a large portion, but it's definitely started to grow over the years. So if you look through FY 18-19, where it was $48,755, it's had a natural progression. So we're now projecting $61,690. So for those of you who receive a water bill from us, that $2.29 is what that every account, whether you're a water only, sewer only, every account pays that capital reserve fee. There's no fire hydrant revenue. We really haven't had that come up in some time where we're charging something related to fire hydrant revenue. The new item that's on here per the agreement that was signed about a year ago is with KGI, the broadband initiative. We do have a lease agreement in place. The first year, no charge to them. However, moving forward, and they did start paying, I think it was the end of February, it's $2,000 a month. So this is a year's worth, 2,000 times 12 months, as long as that agreement is in place. That agreement is for 5 years. I had Matt look at that the other day. For some reason I had in my mind, I thought it was an annual renewal. But regardless if they locate on one or two tires, they pay that $2,000 a month. Not sure if you want an update on that, but they have not completed the whole project yet as far as service authority. They were supposed to go on 2 water towers. That is the Oakland Park water tower and the Arnold's Corner water tower, which is across the street. They have located equipment on Oakland. still yet to locate on Arnold's. They were supposed to give us internet service to 4 of our 5 plants. Dahlgren, they could not, something about the signal with the base. They've only located or provided service to Oakland Park, scheduled to do Hop Yard Farm. So they still have a way to go. It's my understanding COVID has hurt them and whatever else has affected their business model, but that's where we're at. But that's the $24,000 revenue. Normally, if it's kind of shaky, I wouldn't throw it in here, but that is an agreement. It's obligated, so we put it in here. Let me scroll down. No miscellaneous. So what I want to point you to, if you go down to where at the gray box, it says total revenues from local sources. Primarily, I just want to point out, actually, excuse me, go down to the total operating fund, Chris. Go down to where you see the cyan color. Thank you. I just want to look at last year's versus this year's, where we're at on revenue, and then I also have where we're currently sitting at on revenue projections versus the expenditures as they were presented last. So the difference in last year's revenues versus this year's proposed, we're anticipating $6,990,077. That's a difference of $232,725 from last year. There was a drop off, so you heard me talk about new rate revenue of $248,303. The drop off had to do with the penalties by our regulations. The board amended our regulations last year. We had put in place that anytime there's a local declared emergency, and it also Matt cited as such COVID-19, we would not disconnect service. We would waive late fees, penalties, and so forth. So that has traditionally been about an $80,000 item. That I just removed this year because I'm not sure when they're going to remove that declared emergency that would allow us to go back to penalties. So that is a reduction from last year. But all in all, as mentioned, we're tracking about $232,725 increase from last year. Chris, thank you, sir. You do have that brought up. If you look at the bottom right-hand corner, that's FY22 revenue as projected and the FY22 expenditure. So the last budget meeting we had, we covered expenditures, and as you recall, we have not put in payroll at that time. So everything that was presented is current at $6,742,868. That is a difference, and this is where we have to balance this out. Right now, we are $247,209 more favorable in revenues and expenditures. Last year, similar situation, but what we did is we programmed monies towards the reserve. We have roughly $172,000 right now programmed in the reserves under expenditure. So what I wanted to look at when we get back to next week, I wanted to cover payroll this week, but I apologize, I just have not got to yet. I'm working through some things. One of those will be looking to come to the board to approve a new description for position, and we're going to use one of the current vacant operator positions. So we got some work to do there. I didn't want to pledge all this to cash reserves yet. I wanted to get the board's feel next week on payroll to see what the board's desire is. And if there's any delta in between, then I'm going to come back to the board and recommend we would basically take those remaining portions, put it to the cash reserve funds, and then you would have revenues and expenditures equal one another. So that is revenue. Do we have any questions on revenues?
Mr. Morris, can we start with you, sir? Do you have any questions regarding revenues?
Yes, ma'am, I do.
Go right ahead, sir.
Do you hear me okay?
Yes, we can. Go right ahead.
Okay. My connection's low here. I don't know who can answer this, but in the articles of incorporation, it says the service authority is responsible for the water, the sewer, and it says essentially collection of refuse and disposal of garbage. If that's in the articles incorporation, why are we not getting revenue from the operation of the landfill?
Thank you for that question, Mr. Morris. I will have to go back if it's okay with the board and look at any board minutes. Obviously, when that contract or revenue stream was spoken for, I'm sure it had to pass via board resolution. And there could have been a change at some point from the Articles of Incorporation where County Board of Supervisors may have passed a resolution. I say may is the operative word because I do not know that to be factual. If the board like for me to go back through the board minutes, I can try to find it. I do know, Mr. Morris, when you posed that question earlier in email, we think we got it narrowed down to a little bit of a time frame. I want to say maybe from 1998 to the year 2002. Because in speaking to Mr. Kusenberry, he said that was done prior to his time, which was pre-2002. So, and Patty informed me there was some changeover from who was managing the landfill. And I believe the last change was in 98, somewhere around that period. So that gives me a window. So if the board would like for me to research that, I'd be happy to do that. But I do not have an answer as far as those revenues and why they're pointed to a certain account.
Mr. Morris,
Yeah,
do you have any other?
That would be great.
And do you have any other questions, sir?
No, ma'am. I think that would be great. Just that in these times we got to be looking at all available sources, and if that's something we're entitled to, we should be, getting it. I understand the board of supervisors has their budget they're dealing with too, and looking for everything. I appreciate Mr. Weekly's answer. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Morris. Mr. Parker.
Just general questions on connections. How many connections have we been averaging over the last few years? And you're still just holding the 50 in here?
Yes, sir. Still the 50. That was based on our financial model when the 5-year plan was put together. We didn't want to overproject. There are years where I believe we fell off maybe around the 25 to 30, but we have been beyond that. The last couple of years has been around 70. Last year, we ended up with 84. 80 of those 84 were full service connections. Mostly all full service connections come from the Hop Yard Farms development. You'll have a few water only accounts like Northern Neck, for example, the auto parts right near our office needed water. BB&T recently, the well was had some issues. So you'll have a couple water only accounts, but the only time I book something, I'll use the words in the budget, is if we have a known either developer or a commercial property that says, hey, this project's going through. If that happens after the budget's set, like some of those, like the urgent care, for example, that's one after the fact. So we benefited from it, but it wasn't in the budget numbers because it wasn't in the horizon during the time of the budget. So we've kept it at 50. The last 2 years, we've been beyond 50. Hop Yard is the only development on the books right now. And so we speak to them directly. Dan Sweeney was in our office recently. There was some, I think Section 13 is getting ready to begin. And so we're on track, but we don't want to project 100. We don't want to project 25. We just stick with our financial model. Hopefully 50 comes in. I worry about the day where it's, okay, that gets completed, or where's the next development? But that was the modeling at that time, and we felt comfortable believing we can at least meet that target within the 5-year plan that was adopted.
So we're comfortable that 50 will still stick in Hop Yard this year.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And speaking with Mr. Sweeney, who handles the land development portion, whether they're dealing with Ryan Homes or Richmond American Homes, whoever's building there, we feel comfortable with that 50.
No more questions.
Mrs. Cleveland.
Yeah, so I had a question about the COVID funding that was received. I can't remember what it was called, but where do you put that in these financials?
That's a good question. It's not showing up on the revenue here. Well, let me speak to what we received, and then I'm going to ask Ms. Hahn to speak to where it goes to. Obviously, there has to be some revenue portion so you can use it. We received about $210,000, thank you, Patty, for the COVID utility relief funding. It was kind of a second round, if you will, utility specific. And we did receive those funds. Ms. Hahn, would you like to clarify how those monies are showed and accounted for?
Okay, the funds are not really funds directly to the service authority. They're replacement funds for what the customers would pay. So it's in place of the revenue that would come from the customers, is how this revenue comes in.
So then are you putting it in, I guess, either the water fees or the sewer fees? Is that where it's going, or?
Right. That's what happens is when the actual revenues get calculated when the bill is generated. And then there's a formula, I think about 98% that we feel that we will capture. So the revenue comes in based on the bill. And so then the payment comes in, and the revenue has already been stated by that bill, but then the revenue comes in, or the payment comes in as cash.
So, and thank you, Ms. Hahn. So we've expended, I think we have just under $80,000 remaining. And I think Ms. Hahn and her team, she's done very well because there's this whole auditing. The county is the one that's really overseeing this, but we keep the records and making sure that they're audited and reviewed. So there is a customer attestation form. So they have to say, hey, I have a financial hardship or whatever. They're signing off under penalty of law. And then we go back and look through the criteria, make sure they meet eligibility, and then we apply those funds to that account. So I know when you start talking about revenue offset, that's kind of bad language or maybe not appropriate language, but it is tied to a customer account. We just don't put it in our revenues as a nest egg. Just say, hey, we have $210,000 more dollars. So it is a replacement for customers who are having issues. Thank you, Ms. Hahn.
Thank you.
And if we could note for the record, Ms. Bender is in attendance here now as well.
Sorry for the delay.
Tracking.
Thank you, Ms. Bender. And I don't have any questions, Mr. Weekly.
Okay, and I spoke with Ms. Bender on her way and just mentioned I will definitely give her the time needed to review the information here tonight.
Very good.
Would you like to move on to rates?
Yes.
Okay. Mr. Dines? All right, so as Mr. Dines pulls up the rate, the copy that you have, the hard copy, and he's getting ready to have on here, and you have it in your email, all I did was pull from the 5-year rate plan. The 5-year rate plan adopted in 2019, June of 2019, the percentage increases were as followed for each year. The first year was 10%. The second, third, and fourth years are at 4% increase. And the fifth year is at 3%. And that percentage is applied across those fees. So when you look at water consumption, the wastewater consumption, all the fees under usage fee, basically, even when you get down to capital reserve fee, debt fees, for example, they're a flat fee, but that percentage was across all of those fees. So what you see on the left there, and it's the adopted rates. I probably should say the same. I have it listed as proposed rates to the right, which is the FY 21-22. So those are the scheduled rates unless the board of directors chooses to take action to do something different. These rates would naturally apply starting after July 1, which actually would not show up until your September bill because we bill every 60 days. But those are the rates. So for a minimum bill customer, and that's a customer that uses 3,000 gallons or less in a 60-day period, because again, we bill bi-monthly. Your bill is looking to increase roughly $6 over a 60-day period. So if you break it down monthly, it's $3 a month. If you go up to what we refer as an average monthly residential bill, which I see Chris has the line items there. So if you go down to line item 91, it says minimum bi-monthly residential bill. And it's important to specify between residential and commercial, but the residential, the average, that's line item 94, that's based on 10,000 gallons. So naturally, as you use more, sewer is almost 3 times the rate of what water is. That's just what it is. Our cost to treat sewer is more. There's more involved. There's just no other way to put it. So there's an increase there of roughly just under $11. So that comes out to a little over $5.50 monthly. I don't minimize that or try to downplay that. It is an increase to our customer. But hopefully one day if we get to monthly billing, folks will see this as a monthly bill, and you will see compared to, this is my opinion, I do not speak for the board, but you will see that that is a utility like any other utility. You get gas, phone, electric. If you take that minimum bill, which we're projected to be at $158.58, and broke that down monthly, you're talking about $75, $77 a month per utility. So again, our debt fees is why we're high. We're about $100 fixed fees on your bill between water, sewer debt, and capital reserve fees. And then the sewer being about 2.5 times the cost compared to water per 1,000 gallons is why we're high. Commercial, reason why we project a lot off residential, commercial is different because you get into a lot of different factors. Once you go above a 1-inch meter, there's a minimum consumption rate. So, for example, I think a 1-inch meter, it's up to 21,000 gallons, or is that 1.5 inches? 1.5 inches. So, regardless if you use 1 gallon or 21,000 gallons, that's what you're billed at for that meter size. And then there's other multiple factors that go into that. So we strictly deal with the residential side. All that's captured in our billing software through Muni billing, but for the purpose of the budget, I just wanted to explain kind of what the normal customer sees on the residential side. So if you go down below the average, there's the bulk water sales. That's the rate we charge. If the vehicle is over 3,000 gallon capacity, it's at the rate of $48.03. Vehicles up to 3,000 gallon capacity, it's at $26.83, and the per 1,000 gallon is $8.01. So there's a charge for the truck, and then it's the per 1,000. So the bulk rate is $8.01 per 1,000 gallons. So again, back when we looked at revenues, we're projecting about 12,000 gallons. And honestly, with our groundwater withdrawal, we don't want to try to solicit and try to raise that to $100,000 worth of revenue. I mean, revenue, normally you wouldn't hear me say that, but we don't want to cause issues with our withdrawal limits. We need that for our customers. And these are things like VDOT, for example. They've got ditch cleaning activity and other stuff going on. They need water. So we want to provide that service, which VDOT provides for county citizens. Septic disposal, we have some monies there. I'm not looking to change that at this time. Obviously, that would have to be an amendment to our rates anyhow. There was an adjustment, I think, by Air, Patty mentioned several years ago, and that's the truck disposal fee. But until we can get a handle on, are we going to have another solids handling facility, or are we looking at taking plants offline, keeping 5 facilities, really tracking what we're doing and getting a handle on our solids management portion, I really don't want to encourage bringing in more vehicles. This is a good source of revenues. I've generated revenues at other localities I worked for prior to here, but you got to have a handle on what you're doing. So my goal and strategy is, once the board, I know we got a joint meeting next week, but I don't know if we'll walk away with where you would like to go or not, but at some time in the future, when you identify, hey, another solids handling facility, or if we're consolidating plants, we just need that one and we can manage solids a lot better, then we'll go after this because there's monies there. There's regular revenues, and then we'll increase that every 5 years, where by ordinance you have to have your septic tank pumped. So you're naturally going to have an uptick, but we really don't project it. Back to the revenues, we have 0 in there because we're not projecting any. There is a tampering fee. If someone tampers with the meter, it's $250. We did put some devices in place where we can lock down. It's got a serial number. We would attach that to the meter set form. So it's only our tag. So obviously, if we didn't touch it, someone else did, they're charged that fee. Again, we're not projecting anything down there. We're not trying to say that's going to be a revenue source, but that fee exists. Unmeter connections, I'm going to speed this up here. That we have about 50 of those, and that's where we acquired systems over the years. For whatever reason, those 50 customers don't have meters, so they pay at a higher rate. We would look to try to address all 50 of those should the board look to take on and approve a meter replacement program. That certainly would be the appropriate time. We did get that number down. I think we were at 53 one time, so not a big reduction, but we reduced it by 3, and we will continue to do so as well. And we don't have, although there's a fire suppression availability fee, we're not tracking anything on that. So again, the rate summary is just to provide a review for the board. And I know, Ms. Cleveland, this is your first year. These are the rates that are scheduled to take place July 1, unless the board takes action to, do something different with their 5-year plan that's already in place. And that's what I have, Madam Chair, on rate summary.
Thank you, Mr. Weekly. I'll take questions from members. Mr. Morris, we'll start with you again, sir. Do you have any questions for Mr. Weekly?
No question.
Thank you, Mr.
No
Morris.
questions, ma'am.
Thank you. Mr. Parker.
Yeah, the only question I have, because it seems glaring to me, is why aren't we applying the rate increases to everything, right? Why are they not being applied to bulk water sales, the unusual water service fee? Why isn't everything going up at the same rate? It seems ponderous to me that you would just stick those rate increases on the customers, but you got these commercial things. I know we don't make a lot of money necessarily from them, but why are their rates not going up at the exact same rate as the customers? That's the question.
Okay, let me go back, make sure I heard bulk water sales. What was the other one? The septic and the unusual.
You've got like all of them in the middle. You've got your bulk water sales, your unusual water fee, your septic disposal rate. There's like a whole bunch of fees right in there that aren't going up at the same rate everything else is.
Sure. So thank you. So bulk water sales, the 801 actually is about as competitive. Folks still will go down sometimes to Stafford and pull from Stafford. Most of the time, folks will only pull here if they're out a little further, like Colonial Beach, Port Royal. They come here. So that is the rate we feel to be competitive. We certainly could take a look at that if we want to raise it. I don't know if that means folks would. The water hauler and the septic disposal. The septic disposal is kind of the same thing. It's a hauler, right? One is picking up water, the other one's disposing of waste. So on the bulk water sale, which is a water hauler, we can look to raise it. I don't know if that means less revenue, less activity. We certainly can look at that, sir. The septic disposal rate, the reason why I haven't even touched that is because we have no activity. Primarily that rate that's there now, is higher than other counties. If you actually break that out, I know it says 68.95 per thousand. I think that comes out to being actually 6.8 cents per thousand, and most everyone else, I think when you and States checked in, is about 4 cents per thousand gallons actively. So we're already higher. So that's one point. The other one is just, again, it's being able to handle our own solids and manage it with one solids handling facility. So that's my explanation. The unusual wastewater fee, we really don't get any of that, and I don't want any of that. I'm not sure exactly what that would be. Some places, not necessarily here, but I've dealt with like Apple packing warehouses, something that would generate, have a higher BOD value because it's got some type of sugar, or a dairy, for example, have a higher strength wastewater. That would fall in that category. We don't really have anyone that fits that. Valley Proteins, we can't process, or nor do we want their grease. So there's not really anything that's within our area that would qualify or approach us on unusual wastewater fee.
No further questions.
Thank you, Mr. Parker. Ms. Bender?
This goes back to my discussion from, can you hear me? From last week. The commercial customers for the tap fees, can we charge a little bit more on that, or would that make it not competitive?
I will tell you, right after I first got here, I mean, we hear about our rates, and I don't minimize that. We're number 5 in the state. I keep saying it, and I shouldn't, probably because I'm not proud of it. But that's where we're at in the Commonwealth of Virginia. That's our billable rates. The connection fees, we're hearing from the community that we're high. We had a joint meeting at time with the Board of Supervisors and the EDA, and there was a roundtable, and that was a consistent theme. I don't want to get into back and forth whether that keeps a business from coming here or not. Obviously, there's a difference between a Lowe's or a Walmart versus someone that, I don't know if it's appropriate to use the term, a Ma and Paul type of operation, a family business, probably a better term for it. So it may make it a little difficult for them. But I have heard, at least from that business sector, from that meeting and other a couple businesses prior, that saying your connection fees are ridiculous. You're $3,000 to $5,000 more than other localities. So that's why I have not presented it, because I've already heard from some board members, Board of Supervisors, that hey, we're really higher than other localities. So again, just like whether it's the septic disposal fees or the connection fees, I work at the pleasure of the board. If you would like us to go through and look to see if those fees could increase, I'd be happy to do so. That's the reason why I have not presented that as an option to the board.
All right.
So, Ms. Bender, if I can add to that, that's a good question. That's a fair question. But I can tell you from my experience as staff as the economic development specialist, over and over and over again, we were told by small businesses that the cost of connecting was prohibitive, and that they just couldn't, or the ones that were already here were really struggling to keep up with it, and got a lot of complaints on the economic development side of the house. So I would really hesitate to try to implement something like that. I think that would really make it even harder for ED to do their job.
Yeah, I've heard it too. But I had to ask the question because it's been brought, especially talking to citizens recently. They keep bringing that up. Where can we take the burden off the citizens and put it somewhere else? But that was a question. Thank you for the answer.
Yes, ma'am.
I was just going to back up what Ms. Kupka said from another angle. I work with a lot of civil engineering firms. It is the #1 complaint about putting development here in King George is the connection fee for commercial.
Thank you. Anything else, Ms. Bender? All right, Mrs. Cleveland.
No questions.
All right, very good. Go ahead, Mr. Weekly. What else do you have for us, sir?
Actually, Madam Chair, that's all I had before you tonight. My plan next week is to have the payroll, it will be the merit proposal for you all to discuss. And we could possibly come back and take a little look at some expenditures. Obviously, if we're putting some scenarios out there with payroll, that's where that expenditures, you will see that in the salaries and wages. And then from that discussion, I would take direction from you, and I would go back and adjust the revenues, and where we would have a balanced budget of revenues, I could determine how much more monies to put back to cash reserves, if that's the board's desire, and then get the balance, the budget balance. Projecting further out, assuming whether you needed more work sessions or not, once you've got it from a work session format that we like what we've seen, then I will put together the presentation that would come to the board to present. At that meeting, you would either authorize me to or not to advertise for a public hearing, which you would get public input, and then we move down the process of you all adopting and then ultimately appropriating the budget. So we still have time. I'm not trying to rush the board. We don't have as many departments as the county, but that's the plan for next week, is the payroll, which we can throw some expenditures at it. And then from there, we'll be able to adjust revenue. So I think we're on track. I feel comfortable about the budget dates that you've chosen. I feel like unless the board needs additional meetings, that should be able to help us get to where we need to be for our final budget for FY22. So that's all I had tonight, Madam Chair.
All right, very good. Thank you very much. Do we have any other business to come before us this evening then?
No, Madam Chair.
All right. I want to thank all of our staff for coming out tonight before we move to adjourn. And do I have a motion?
Yes, motion to adjourn to March 16th, 2021 at 5 p.m. in the boardroom.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Chair votes aye. Motion carries. This meeting is hereby adjourned to the next regularly scheduled meeting on March 16th, 2021 at 5:00 p.m. in the boardroom. That meeting may be held by electronic means and/or remote participation only and may be closed to the public being physically present. All citizens are encouraged to participate in advance or during the meeting by electronic means as provided by the county. We are adjourned.